Hey everybody, it's Wednesday. It's lunchtime. It's a little bit late. We normally do this at noon, but things happen on Wednesdays. I'm here. I'm Casey Whitener here in the studio with you for Right on SC. And today we have a great interview with author Julia Daly. So I'm going to bring her in here in just a second, but just so you know exactly where you are, this is Right on SC, and this is an author interview, and I cannot wait to share my new friend Julia with you. Hi, Julia. How are you?
I'm great. How are you?
Doing great, thanks. I'm excited to do this with you and for you. I want to get into the details of the book that you've written, but first, why don't you introduce yourselves to our audience and tell us a little bit about you and your writing journey and where are you at and all these other wonderful things about you.
Well, thank you. I say I'm a Texan with a Southern accent now because we've moved to Texas from Mississippi, and I received a BS and an MS in English and education, and began as a communication PR director at the State Department of Education in Mississippi, and at two colleges there. I was an adjunct professor, and then I was the executive director of a nonprofit, the Mississippi Craftsmen's Guild, and that was a lot of fun with 300 artisans, and so I got to tell their stories. And so I've always written a lot of press releases and speeches for presidents of colleges and things like that, but writing fiction is another ball game.
So it sounds like your career was full of a lot of opportunities to work with other artists. When you think about your favorite role, what was your favorite one? Did you like being in the classroom in front of students? Did you like working behind the scenes, putting on a good show? What was your favorite role?
I really love working with students. That was a lot of fun, but it's difficult to pick one really because they were all so different. But I think my final career was with the Craftsmen's Guild of Mississippi, and just to watch those incredible artisans do what they do. You've got one of them living in Columbia, South Carolina, Susan Ford, who is a wonderful glass maker, and she was in the Mississippi Guild. So, working with them was just a pretty incredible experience.
It is a lot of fun when artists get to collaborate and be part of events together, fairs together, share each other's work, things like that. We have a really good relationship with a group called One Columbia here in town, and they promote artists of all disciplines. And it's a lot of fun to be part of those events and part of those engagements as well.
It's like watching magic, when
you
watch somebody on a potter's wheel take a lump of clay and turn it into something magnificent. It's really thrilling.
It really is great. So all of this exposure to art, spending time with art, being part of a writing discipline, multiple writing disciplines, all lead you to this career that you're in now, which is writing fiction and sharing your story. So tell us a little bit about how you came to write this particular novel, your debut novel. It's called No Names Be Given. It's historical fiction. Tell us a little bit about how this story came to you and what made you want to sit down and write it.
Well, this story has been in my head for 40 years. And there's a group of us, a large group actually, who are writing over 60, age 60. And that's been fun to read articles about. And I think it's because we had such busy careers and rearing our children and doing all of those busy work things as young people that we finally have time in retirement to sit down and put on paper what we've been wanting to share for a long time. And I think it's like my fellow Mississippian William Faulkner said, if you have a story inside you, it's got to come out. So after 40 years of thinking about this one had to come out. And when we were moving to Texas, I found a file, and there were some chapters, scenes that I had written about this topic in some writing classes that I took while I was at some of these colleges. We got to take classes for free, so I would take advantage of that as part of my salary. And I found those and I said, it's far past time to get this down on paper. And it came about because I'm an adopted child from a maternity home hospital in New Orleans. And my protagonists are birth mothers who give birth to their children and relinquish them for adoption in that maternity home hospital in New Orleans. So it's semi-memoir like. There's a thread of my story that runs through it, but I kept it from being too close by making it fiction.
I think all certainly debut novels have some kind of autobiographical element in them. Mine is the same way. After December, the main character is a male protagonist, but everybody who reads it is like, "This is you." Like we know he's you, and I'm like, "It's not really me." But
No.
it's that story though that's been burning inside of you for a long time. How does it feel to have it released to the world? It just came out August 3rd, so it's just been out for about a week. But did you have beta readers? Did you put it into group workshops? Have people been looking at this for a long time? Or tell us about the process of creating the story.
Well, of course, I did that terrible first draft and
Right.
got it on paper. I became hooked on the whole process. I'm a very detailed oriented person, so I have checklists everywhere. So I would go to every class that the Writers League of Texas would offer. I would go to their writing retreat and their conference and talk to agents and publishers, and I thought, I'm going to try the traditional publishing route. And I jumped the gun and sent out this manuscript long before it was ready to all of these agents, maybe 50 agents,
Oh
on
my
one of
goodness.
these query tracker software things. And I heard back from some, and some were interested, and some liked the story, but they could tell it wasn't ready. So then I became hooked on editors, and I had developmental editors. I had the line editors. I had, the proofreaders. I had all of that as well. And I do have some writers groups, and we shared, 10 pages at a time and that kind of thing. But it finally got to the place I said, we're going to have to pull the trigger because it's ready to be birthed. And so it was on August the 3rd. And we've had a lot of fun with it. It hit number 6 on Amazon in adoption books, and I think my favorite part of the whole process is hearing from these birth mothers from back in the 50s and 60s and 70s who relinquished their children for adoption. That's been my favorite part, is hearing from other adoptees and from birth mothers who have this story. And they said, when we read the description of your book online, our heart clutched, and it was our story too. So that's been real special.
Yeah, isn't it rewarding when people find the story that they wanted to tell, but maybe didn't have the time or the craft or the strength to be able to do that, right? And then you open up the pages and you see yourself on the pages of this novel. What a fantastic connection! So, as you're marketing the book, as you're putting it out there and you're putting it in front of people, did you target some of those groups? And I don't mean that in an ugly marketing way. I mean, did you think like, this is my audience, and so let me see if I can go find these folks? And how did that process work for you?
Well, I think a lot of those people are in book clubs. Book clubs are huge now for authors. And so, of course, we're definitely trying to get in touch with them. And I've spoken to a few book clubs already, and have plans to do more in the future. And now that we can do it on Zoom, any book club in the country who wants me to meet with them virtually, I can do that. And the book is going through a lot of virtual book tours. And you see a lot of that on social media.
Mm-hmm.
When I was in public relations, we sent out hard copy press releases. So social media is a whole new ball game, but it's been real fun to learn.
Did you do any of that, the press release approach? Because I listened to a podcast that was all about how press releases were like the overlooked winning thing for authors to use. And so I tried using them for my book that comes this week. And I know I'm getting the traction that that podcaster promised me.
Well, my publicist said, Julia, releasing a book is not news. Everybody releases a book. I mean, there are hundreds of books that are released every day. That's not news. You've got to find a hook with that book to try to reach groups and to, like November is a National Adoption Month. Well, of course, we'll do a lot of things in November. So you've got to find something else that interests people, that weaves your story into the press release, and not just, look at me, I've published a book. Wow.
Right. Right. I've been trying to craft these like different angled ones, and my
Mhm.
publisher keeps saying like, "Why are you wasting your time on press releases? We're fine. Like, just use social media. You're going to be fine." I'm like, "No, but I want to be on TV."
Yeah, that's
She's
true.
like, "You're on TV." She's like, "You're on YouTube every week." I'm like, "I know, but I want to be on TV."
Somebody
um,
else's show.
yeah, exactly. I want somebody else to interview me, for goodness sake. All right. Well, look, Julia, tell us about the protagonist. So you've got three female characters in this. Did you take a first person narrative? Did you go third person narrative? How is it written?
It's third, close. But I didn't want to do it from first. Like, I didn't want to write a memoir. I wanted to step back a little bit from it and see the characters from afar. But they're three young women from different walks of life. One's from Illinois. She's the only non-Southerner in the book. And then she escapes a bad home life in Illinois and becomes an exotic dancer in New Orleans. So we have, that thread. And then we have Faith, whose father is evangelical, internationally known minister, and she is attacked, and so she ends up in the home. And then Becca, whose name has changed, and I didn't even know there was a show about a Southern woman who was named Claire, whose husband was in the White House. You may know that TV show. I did not. So one of my editors said, "This is sounding familiar," and I said, "I've never even watched that show. How did you think I was copying that show?" But I changed her name, and that brings up the point that people will see themselves, or they will see other books or other, I think there's not a new idea. I think we all have ideas that are in our heads from somewhere, but we don't know from where. So I thought that was interesting. And one of my beta readers read and said, she actually organizes political campaigns. And so she told me, she said, "You've got two Southern governors who are going to end up in the White House. That's just not probable. They don't have enough electoral votes in those states." And I was like, "What? I'm as apolitical as they come. I don't even know what you're talking about." So this is fiction. Can I write that these people end up in the White House? And she said, "Well, it's just not very probable." And I said, "Do you know that I have read books that are asking me to suspend my disbelief and to be able to change bodies? People, magical realism is asking me to suspend my disbelief, and you can't believe that these people are going to end up in the White House?"
Besides, you just tell her Jimmy Carter and Bill Clinton were only, two presidencies away from one another. So, it's not that improbable.
That was funny, though. Everybody reads it differently, and every editor, it was so funny. And I think that's the reason I became hooked on editing, is they never disliked or liked the same parts of the story. They were all entirely different and
Yeah.
wanted me to change different things. So that was very interesting.
And your readers will be that way too, right? Your readers will find maybe they see their mother in the story, or they see their
Yeah.
sister or themselves or a cousin, or, their best friend is in this story or something like that too. So it'll be a lot of fun as you get to know them. You mentioned the book club. I'm a big fan of book club marketing. So have you been able to talk your way into any book clubs here in the next year or so to promote the book?
Yes, and I did go ahead and put book club discussion questions in the back of the book.
Yeah, that's a great idea.
And reach them. But I've had several people who said, "Oh, we definitely want you for our book club," and so that's been fun.
That's awesome. So tell me about the research for this, right? So historical fiction typically requires a good bit of research, and beyond the accuracy or inaccuracy of political electability, what were some of the things that when you were researching, you were surprised by them? Things that you made assumptions about, maybe that you were proved wrong, or something that you thought this might be the case and it turned out it was?
Well, I think learning more about the history of maternity homes in the U.S. Was enlightening to me. I didn't know that they started back in the 1800s. The Salvation Army opened the first maternity home hospital, and that they're still practicing today. There are like 400 maternity homes in the country. Of course, they're not the same as they were back in the 30s through the 70s, where women were pretty much required to give up their children for adoption. They're more trying to help women keep their babies and to provide housing and families who live in the homes with them. And the statistics, I think, also really shocked me that there are 100 million, approximately 100 million adoptions, adopted, let's see, 100 million people who have adoption in their families in the U.S.
Okay.
And I think that's pretty staggering, you
Yeah.
know, that that there are that many, and that there are 7 million adoptees in the U.S. Living today. So that's a pretty large group of us out here.
Yeah. Did you find as you were doing your research, did you travel anywhere? Did it take you to New Orleans? Did you spend time photographing those local landmarks that you were going to build into the story?
Well, actually, I'm going next week and meeting my publisher in New Orleans, and we're going to go to the maternity home hospital and take those photographs and take a little sentimental journey. She's a writer, and she's researching placing a book in New Orleans, so she's going to meet me there, and we're going to, do all of the tourist things that we can do.
Well, that should be a lot of fun. Taking a lot of pictures, put them all over your Twitter and your Instagram. Speaking of which, this is Julia's Twitter handle. If you're not following her yet on Twitter, go out there and give her a follow. As you know, we're right on SC, so at right on SC is our Twitter as well. We have a tweet chats on Tuesdays at 6 p.m. We'll be glad to promote your book in those tweet chats as well, Julia.
That'd be
What
great.
else would you like for our audience to know about you or about your process? How was the publishing process surprising to you? Did it take a long time? Was it fast? What about the publishing process surprised you?
Well, I think those of us who are in retirement and writing books are not wanting to wait the amount of time that traditional publishers take. And so I was fully prepared to do the self-publishing route. But at one of these writers' retreats, I met my publisher, and she is a woman-owned small imprint in Oklahoma, and she believed in the story, and so she is my publisher today, and that saved me several years, and so I'm excited about that. I wanted a partner in the journey, and she's a great partner.
And now, was she able to bring you book cover designers and things like the cover's gorgeous, by the way. Was she able to bring you cover designers and line editors and things like that? What were some of the advantages of having a professional publisher?
Well, I had pretty much already done all of that by the time I decided not to self-publish and to choose her as a partner. And I chose because I looked at so many covers. That was so important to me. But in my mind, I had the cover designed. It was going to be all these bassinets of children, because that's so poignant that the name is No Names to Be Given. And those children were in those bassinets. And when I looked at all the books that I liked, one cover designer kept coming, to the front, and she was from San Francisco. And so we chatted, and she took my ideas, and she did have a little square with the bassinets, but she said, "You're paying a professional cover designer. You need to have more than just bassinets. You could do that yourself, on the cover." So she came up with that cover design, and I just really like it. It's color blocked like the 60s would have been. It gives you that nostalgic look.
Yeah, it really is very beautiful. Tell me about the name, No Names to Be Given. So, what's the significance of the name? What made you decide to call the book that?
Well, it comes from one of the quotes in the book. When she looked up and heard in her mind all the babies crying. They were crying as if they already knew. They had no mothers to hold them, no names to be given.
Gotcha. Very excellent work. Excellent job on a historical fiction novel for the first time out. Is that what you're going to keep writing, do you think? Is there another story burning its way through your through your brain? As I say, burning a hole in your pocket and burning its way through your brain at the same time, and they kind of squish together. But anyway, is there another story that's there that's ready to be written for you?
Yes, I've already started my second novel. I've got about 20,000 words so far, and it's based on, I don't know if you've ever been to Mesa Verde National Park in Colorado. It's near Durango, but I never dreamed that the U.S. had such gorgeous ruins from native people who lived there. And when I saw it, it was almost a spiritual experience, and it really inspired me. And so that's going to be worked into my second novel.
All right, good stuff. Well, if there's anything I can do ever to promote you and your work, please, by all means, call on me. I'm glad to. I'm always glad to promote Southern authors. We are right on SC, but we're certainly, Southeastern writers, and let's bring those Southern stories forward. Thank you for telling the story of No Names to Be Given, and this adoption scenario, this whole history that we have that maybe hasn't been unearthed in other people's stories yet. So I appreciate you, Julia Daly. Thank you for being with us today.
Thank you so much.
All right. Have a great rest of your day. We're going to see you all next time on Right on SC.